Chapter 3. From the glass cupola on the roof of his house in Pacific Heights, Corner listened to the mournful foghorns. Thick gray fog rolled through the Golden Gate, blanketing his view of the bay to match his mood. How did the line go? Dealing friends never ends. The business was never personal, just business. Using more did not trouble Corner, or at least it didn't seem to slow him down much. A man made his own decisions, even those that promised destruction, always collateral damage. What are friends for? Just don't get thinking they wouldn't do the same to you. He'd watched that civil facade fall too many times. When push came to blasting away, business is business, his father used to say. Let the chips fall as they always will. Gray mornings like this neutralized his captain's perch atop his panorama of the Golden Gate. Golden thoughts filled his head. San Francisco, after all, was built on the frenzy of gold. He thought how the Yerba Buena Wild Mint Harbor quickly disappeared in the crush of such a crazy mix of miners, gamblers, grifters, and whores, swelling this little old spit of sand waste to a wannabe city of 30,000 in 1 year. The rush. Letting the crystal rock melt into neurons firing in the night. He could smell that gold. Corner thought gold, dreamed gold. He remembered a plan to dredge the bay and reclaim the residual gold washed down from all the hydraulic mining in the Sierras when high-pressure hoses washed away mountains of earth in the search for gold. The end of the rush. Bald-ass greed, stripped of all romance, all fun. Greed mechanized, weaponized. Stripper, make love, make war, rape, skin, gut, pulverized bone, so much dust. So much dirt washed down that he'd walked on islands of it, formed at the confluence of the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers. Having a power launch berthed less than a mile from his crib gave him access to hundreds of miles of inland waterways or a head out on the Big Pond. The gold he sought carried the allure of antiquity. Nothing turned a woman on like old money, honey. He thought how gold never tarnished, but the wasted mountains of lives sure as hell did. Tarnished, trashed lives. Gold still can't melt into your neurons like mamacita coca. After the rush, as all bones turned to dust, the gold remained the same bitch. His current benefactor, Johnstone Warren, told him some about the Copper Scroll, a treasure list he described as ingots, earrings, crowns studded with rubies and sapphires and emeralds, jugs, platters, flasks, garments, basins, cups, bowls, and vessels of gold coins, enough to sink the gold standard of entire countries. Thoughts of the treasure spurred a powerful lust in him. The phone sang. Have you made the arrangements? I found him where you said he'd be, Corner replied. Excuse me, Rakitin. I know this business. I do not need any damn helicopter escort. They didn't even call a tow for my car. Those issues don't issue for me. You know I'm only Mr. Warren's go-boy, Rakitin said. A rather ironic tone for a boy, Corner chuckled. He's meeting the woman. Keep us informed. Time is growing short. Moore admired Christina's rapid gait, her movements so languid yet compact. It gave her a bounce as they walked, the path bordered by blown, clipped, and edged lawn. He watched her greet passing students, her curls dancing in the wind, eyes shining brighter as each one passed. The sheer magnitude of her personality reminded him how far he had retreated from the social cultural whirl, a whirl of a world ghosting him while vivifying her. They climbed broad steps to the lecture hall, large enough, he figured, to accommodate some hundreds. At least a dozen students had attached themselves to her as she swept to the podium. He hung to the back, swallowed by milling students, eavesdropping on a conversation between a white student with extreme facial piercings, talking to a black with Rasta dreads and rainbow tie-dyed t-shirt. He took a seat in the rear of the hall. They called her La Voice. The voice, the pierced man informed his friend. Page 62. I heard she had tantric sex with an Indian mystic. That's how she got her power. Yeah, he gave her the straight shot, the pierced man replied with a smirk. Moore wanted to slap his snotty ring-infested face. The feelings for a woman he just met caught him off balance. Whoa, dog! The hall lights dimmed, quieting the buzz of the audience. Christina stepped to the podium. We all in turning around on this planet, looking outer space for aliens. But are there any creatures more alienated than us? A human being right here, she asked. Moore studied the audience. A hip Euro, Mandarin, Latino, Arabic, Judeo, Creole gumbo body. They breathed together. He thought he saw the walls pulse with them. Corner had been right about Christina. She definitely expanded. Obviously, there is a knowing of anything. Not so obviously a knowing as a denial of a thing. A knowing. A knowing denial. A positive negating projection of the very awareness of any knowing out of it in the first place. Thus saying you know it may be found a positive negation of it. It, in this case, is awareness of a being of that knower, a knower of any and y'all knowing, she continued. Our purpose here in this classroom of knowing is picking up on a being of that knower, a discernment of a being of the whole point of view, knowing anything. A point of you as an I being at attention, merely appearing and gazing it. It as awareness, consciousness of any seer still completely baffles any typical comprehension of it. Like knowing the unknowing y'all along, seeing the unseen. The same for feeling it, fielding it, biofielding it, projecting it now as knowing it out as supersonic waves of thoughts of it as though a being seeing now in denial of it, a denial of it indivisible invisibility of any individual. Out in a denial now, knowing it out into appearing in memory information of me or you. That indivisible individual now denied by turning around, knowing it as though a being of anything else. Any thinking of a being, anything else. Thus knowing may hurt, at least for a while, yet paying attention to awareness of a being in the first place, completely pervading any field of you, heals any heart by merely picking up on a being still in any felt feeling field a you. You. She concluded by pulling some students up on the stage. A dozen more streamed up to join them. Taking seats on chairs behind her, Christina spun to touch their fingers. Her movements seemed to stream with his thoughts. Fragments of her talk pierced his reverie, one he'd found himself in since first meeting her. hearing of it as a being seen out in word in her eye, dialectic debate. A debate between a mere appearing, gazing it, or appearing information by a knowing denial of it. Not since Gina had he felt in her eyes such electricity. Again, from a woman on stage, he wondered what Freud would make of that. Whatever is known, written, or thought information is mortal, limited, and filled with misery, and needs to be rejected as oneself. Find yourself by rejecting merely knowing denial of yourself. Those words recognize the need for discrimination within this domain of a being still in the first place, a being of oneself, a means of any meaningful twin between the real and unreal, between a Y and a Y as X, as sex, y'all, as existing as sex. Moore could see Corner smile to himself. Whatever scheme Corner was cooking up, he planned on him being hooked on Christina. The crowd obviously got off on her. The man wearing a knit beret near the front laughed in steady burst. Others, like a delicate Asian woman, remained implacable except for an occasional quick smile. So we all turn here to study metaphysics. As if regular physics ain't enough to chew on, she said. The official title of this class is Theory of Knowledge, though more correctly, we all in turning into it be the knowledge out in her eye of Eve, everybody, projecting, ask knowing out of it, ask knowing consciousness. Merely a supernatural positive negation of it. It as mere thoughts of a being in the first place. Awareness, consciousness of a consciousness. Out, around, knowing out of it as merely a being mirrored in theory. A being seen mirrored as inward memory in the or why of man is mind, or why, mem or why, of a being of me or you. A being still in the first place alone, indivisible. A being alone, indivisible, merely appearing, mirrored, a pairing of me or you out in word as thoughts of a being seeing it, information. A information being seen still in the first place now, ask knowing out of it in a memory. A being seen appearing information out of it, merely mirrored in word as anybody. Anybody. A now why or why now knowing out of it a being. A being as though information now denying itself. You now as not. A positive projection of negation, knowing anybody, anything, anytime, anywhere. Anybody, a now why body. A why now denial of a being still in the first place, first person, present, singular awareness, consciousness of that I am, speaking the dialectic debate of a why now as knowing it, a why now as X, as existing in the first place. Now y'all may begin to comprehend the problem, the dilemma, the duplicity around knowing out of it anything or anybody. Why? Why y'all the talk? Why any language in the first place beyond the obvious function as sex, defiling it as sword, dividing the indivisible merely as thoughts of it, of a being seen still alone, in the first place indivisible. Now as inward thoughts of a knowing out of it. Y'all sliced and diced, fried and dried and retried. A supernatural mistake of a eye of a being seen merely appearing, a gazing it, still in the first place. Now appearing information completely out of it, typically as trivial thoughts of it. Come on, people! We all in turn can do better than settling for mere appearing information a while out in word. For a moment, Moore saw sparks beaming from her eyes, a supernatural mistake of a being seen of it, a being cosmic, electromagnetic field of you or me. Our eye, all of everybody, Moore mused. More and more he found typical thoughts displaced by the why-I dialectic debate, raging like a wildfire. A turning of it, a black around, incinerating that typical mindless ignoring out of it without realizing it. It, a being seen in any eye, merely appearing, a gazing it. Moore resisted an urge to holler, "Yow!" as he turned his attention black out in her eye of Eve will, a wave will of funny action. She now funny that way, that wave of informing any situation. A being seen still in the first place, ancient, ancient, yet new indeed, even from of old. Y'all may now think of a being seen merely mirrored out in your memory, keyed on an arbitrary name. Welcome to discovering a greater side to y'all of a being anybody, any name. Hi! My now not me is my now me mommy. It seems we all introduce ourselves as a being now not. Some anybody appearing around knowing out of it as a now me. A projecting of it as mere thoughts of a name. A na me now knowing out of it as a denying of it. Here I am. That a name, a nami of it. It a being seen, appearing and gazing it still in the first place, indivisible invisibility. Christina paused. A hush passed over the audience. Now, out in any eye, merely appearing, a gazing, it appears inward thoughts, information of any knowing out of it, out in her eye of Eve ray body. Y'all now a cosmic Eve ray body of a will as a positive negation of a being seen still in the first place. Any a now Y body, anybody, that black body mirrored why nah, y'all now appearing information by echoing sound waves supersonically as microwave black around. Appearing out in word information, understanding the spelling of it. What I am saying to y'all in words is that our attention is captivated under the spell, understanding any inward spelling out of it. Now a being captive at attention fixated on a name, knowing out of it more names, more inward denial of it, indivisible invisibility, any appearing of it is a mere deceit of inward memory. Appearing of it out information a while now. This supersonic, supernatural mistake of awareness consciousness of a YI being seen merely appearing and gazing it, still completely indivisible invisibility of any individual. She now paused to turn her gaze as peering around the room. Rapt would not be too strong a word for their attention, caught in the revelation of anybody now, still, why in the first place, a YI appearing, gazing it out of eyes of anybody. Still more was aware of the psi whole power of ignorance of it ignited by day, the Y light, the cosmic soul RI system. By now, a binary I body appearing out in a while, a wily while of which most of these students, once out of ear range, will quickly succumb. Anybody being carried away in its craft, a cunning, crafty, uncanny mirror deceit of any long or short-term memory. Moore imagined himself a grizzled vet, a failed warrior crisped from the inside out by drug, sex, and a rocky role of a painter turned carpenter. Toss in a few near-death experiences, a decade of supernatural visions, along with influence of native shamans, not to mention a name, a Nami of the darkness, now had set him up for a date with the great unknown, cast out in her eye of evil, now a professor professing of it. He found many of these students young, privileged, soft bellies. Their arrogance and inflated self-importance would be offset by Christina's Brahmavidya flamethrower, singeing their inward minds. In that I am now teaching y'all the ABCs of it. Of it, a being seen still in the first place, now appearing out of it, binary, eyes zapping in no knowing projection out of it, any inward formation of it. A while now, any peering information appearing of it from a star to a scar, merely a wily while of Mazdi nature. Yet still a being seen in the first place. Anybody, any, a now Y body, merely a being seen still in the first place, now mirrored inward memory, turning into or out of it, as knowing it as out in any name, or now Nami alone. So arbitrary, yet accepted as self-evident, while that, as cosmic awareness of which I am offering y'all, is likely quickly denied. A denial of it now out in word as mere thoughts of a being still in the first place. In the first place. Out in word by sheer denial. Denial as no knowing out of a being seen still indivisible. Out in word supernaturally as thoughts of a being still alone indivisible invisibility. In the first place, now merely appearing out information mirrored out in word. As now no knowing out of it, any denial of it. Still, y'all, it is that I am is. That is now aware of the ABCs of any inward captivity. A being seen alone, still in the first place, may appear information out of it only merely mirrored in word as thoughts of it. Y'all, any sincere letters you see letters merely then thinking in words. Keep an eye on the ABCs. They will set you free or wrap you all inward chains. Fully one right hemisphere of our brain still remains word-free, untouched. That's the old brain, Brahman, the timeless free brain, free, untouched awareness of any inward captivity, freedom of any inward duplicity. A duplicity is zany thoughts in man as mere inward mind, or why y'all arbitrary, ambiguous memory of a being seen still in the first place. Now ask cause of it. A because, ask knowing information. Ask knowing appearing out of it in a duplicity of a being seen of me or you in memory. Out of it in memory. Out in mind or why. Why or you, etc. Freed at last, thank God Almighty. Freedom now. Freedom everybody. Now y'all as knowing why a being seen alone, indivisible, still in the first place. Any appearing information of a being seen out and moving about is mere inward mirrored duplicity. A duplicity in ABCs of a being seen still indivisible, a being seen still in the first place, a why we all turn our attention now around as knowing that a being seen still at attention. Why speak dialectic reverses polarity from a being still in the first place now at attention as positively negating it, as knowing a denial of that I am is in word a being seen still in the first place as wisdom, us, a being home still in the first place. Why speak dialectic reveals a being seen still in the first place at attention. Attention, by now, binary, radiating sheer duplicity, yad he vav he, asking of it, why now a memory? Why a being you, yada iota, that awareness that I am is. Awareness of consciousness, that aware, any essay to be still in the first person, present, singing, singular, supernaturally, supersonically superimposed in word as thoughts of why being seen out as existing in formation. A being seen still in the first place, alone, indivisible, invisibility of any individual. A being seen appearing, gazing in the first place, appearing out information as zany body. Now a recognition, our eye cognizing, informing of a being, seen now as a mere mirror duplicate. Now Christina paused to let her words sink in. Moore kept finding himself disappearing, a black around of a being seen invisibility out in her eye of Ivre body. Finding himself lost in the richness of a being supernatural while appearing information of it normal out in that neurosis of ignoring it, projecting it out still in the first place, y'all, dark muse, while appearing information out of it a second or two. Thus, finding himself bewildered by her subjectivity, he now saw Christina as mini Christ, y'all, black whole body reabsorbing his sense of a being in any shape or form. But then he'd been dissolved throughout a lifetime of a being referred to or thinking of himself as the darkness, of knowing that impenetrable darkness, with any potential membrane between him or it in memory staying pretty porous. Even Eve now, the sound waves of Christina's voice echoed in his mind more as a symphony, a harmonious or agreeable mingling of sounds, playing a black around the medium of his body, any or Ivre body, as instrument of consciousness, reminding him of a being seen, a Y-eye appearing, a gazing out, the D-arc of a covenant, a perceived agreement, a turning into or out of, a letteral God, a goddess say to be understanding any inward information supernaturally as zany thoughts of it. Page 66. Now a supersonic wave appearing of it out in her eye, her eye, her eye of Ivre body, Eve eye, merely appearing, gazing it still it, a Y-eye of Eve will, evil appearing, disappearing, a why the I hell your you in the first place. In the first place is a home of wisdom, a wise dome, us of a being now that as cosmic knower, as knowing out and about of it, as cause, y'all, as cosmic cause now of no knowing anything or anybody, a blackness body of intent, intending of a being seen a gain and a gain and a gain. More paid attention to it. The arc of it turning a black around into appearing in form as zany role or role playing. A playing out of his role, Painting Christina. Any knowing is a tripartite of a why, a prior why, awareness of a being seen cogitating, merely appearing it, gazing it, or secondly, appearing at it, or at last but least, appearing of it, information in a wordship of it. In the beginning is the word wordship of it carrying anybody's attention literally away. That wordship or worship captivity set sail at an early age. Y'all may think of a being atheistic or nihilistic. Y'all set sail on that same wordship of it. Y'all worship of or on that wordship, carrying attention away as zany information of it. As Painter more appreciated the allegory of it. A I stare, I story, merely appearing it, gazing it, singular, indivisible invisibility now, a why I stare, I story, of Ivre body in verses or roles of complete darkness. Paint that out of your head, the man said. The bliss of our eye absorbing y'all. Sorrow merely that bliss denied in any now knowing, knowing out of it. Any knowledge, untouched, word-free, requires awareness of inward memory to precipitate karma or action of it with a reaction. The inward ship built on sound waves, echoing black around our mouth as organ of speech, Ahoma. She gave a long sound that picked up and reverberated an ambient buzz in the hall. Waves of it continued for several seconds like tuning to a near subsonic frequency of the building itself. Christina repeated it several times, like playing the building as an instrument. This sound, Om, covers the complete vocal range, from airplane waves of our vocal cords, from throat to exiting lips. Realize it. Become more aware of it, vivifying your life with every breath taken. A life completely complete, completely alone, a being indivisible. Y'all never add to it, nor take anything away from it. You are I, all of it. The subject, objectifying, merely mirrored inward memory of a being, seen of why the very subjective knowledge is. Thus we all may in turn seek awareness of it in a while, still projecting any denial of it. Now pick up on the paradox of knowing it in a while as thoughts of missing it. We all may in turn find inward final liberation now, knowing it moment by moment, or ignore it lifetime by lifetime. Metaphysically, the quantum loop continues ad infinitum ad nauseum. Birth and death, beginning and end are a simultaneous point of view. Most will not get that, being covered by the event of either or, birth or death. They share a common gravity of the weight of waiting now for the event of either. 9 months, you could die much quicker. The long-term memory of previous lives generally stays in the subtle luminous counterpart dream body. The sheer gravity of all those lives still easily and instantly offset by realizing that awareness of a being seen still alone, indivisible in the first place. Look for that crack in the cosmic egg. Anyone may get flashes, dreams, visions of past lives. Most will remain ignorant of the past, and for good reason. Ignorance implies intent. Causality. As cosmic, unified, black felt field body is by intent of intentional disregard of it in complete darkness. D-arc-nesse. Blinded by the complete role we all in turn play and pay. Realize that now, y'all, knowing, learning, and earning serves one purpose: paying attention. Paying and paying attention to a why eye of a being seen merely appearing and gazing it. A breathing, a breath of it still in the first place. The eros of now as knowing a being indivisible invisibility of appearing out in a while flows in one direction. Away from it now, asking of it why a being in the first place. The arrow of time moves in a continuous, loopy eternally, y'all. The turning naturally reverses direction in turning you all into or out of that black around of a being now projecting a knowing it out of a being seen in her eye of everybody. Thus the ending of any life returns to a beginning depending on planetary polarity or in any event merely mirrored as birth or death. Polarity shifts, yet that arrow does not till it appears as though it does, coming black around or merely realizing, reversing, retelling that eye stare story of that tale of chasing tail. A living now in a present, knowing out of it turning into a future unknown, frees the mind or why of past memory. We're ready? Page 68. The audience murmured. Moore smiled at the enthusiasm for her shaman showmanship. Christina drank water from a glass on the podium, letting silence settle on the room like a light blanket over an electrical field. As too many of us live long, hard, painful lives, a binary clue as to who, what, or why we all turn into, or out of, or really are, should promote a knowing of a being seen in the first place. Now, a knowing out our ABCs before understanding their inward spelling mitigates suffering that falling as zany thoughts of it. Or you may now know it a lifetime without realizing it. Our I realizing awareness of it is same as awareness of denying it. It, a being seen merely appearing, gazing it is picking up on ABC's complete now as cause of knowing of it, a blackness with inward intent to appear again and again and again, from a being lack to a gain of it, a completion of a complete or perceived darkness. With the utterance of that word, she now caught him in her eye of everybody. Several heads turned his way. The darkness, no longer a mere imaginary thinking of it before him. Now his eyes are merely appearing, gazing it now, asking of it why, and knowing out of it, anybody, anything, anywhere, anytime, mirrored in word as any thoughts of it, the rush of it, a wave of it out in her eyes, crushing him, a black around invisibility, a mere appearing, a gazing it, yet now ask knowing out of it, supersonically, supernaturally, superimposed, ABC's inward mean, as zany information of it, out of it, in her eye of evil, of a wave's funny action function, a la Queen K, appearing anybody, anything, anywhere, anytime, a mere denial of knowing it. She nah funny that wave, Kali Ma's your eye, a black around as causally, y'all, we all wheel of a wheel turning in a race, a groove of machina, a machina so funny that way evil, cunning, cruel deceit of any appearing of it out in her eyes, still in the first place, indivisible invisibility of any individual. Moore let his attention follow the dialectic train to its natural conclusion. Indivisible invisibility of a being seen yet in the first place. Now you know your eye on ABCs of it, he mused. Page 72. Now that I am, as a being, fielding alone, asking who in this room, this campus, this state, this nation, this world, cannot or has not felt that feeling of a being alone? Go ahead and raise your hand if you have never felt or do not know that feeling of a being alone. Anyone? Christina scanned the group with hands on her hips. In that feeling, y'all realizing it directly, by being indivisible in the first place, alone. No feeling is more universal than now knowing of it, a feeling of a being seen alone. Right now, in this room, anyone may still feel it inward, alone. Now, turning the black around, find it indivisible, What then seems to be desperate separation from a being alone is a why merely appearing, gazing it, mirrored out now in memory as any otherwise. Ignoring a being indivisible in the first place now, with intent of intentional inward disregard of that. That, a being seen as felt in word to be y'all alone in formation. Y'all alone the wave function of knowing out of it any appearing in man as mind or why memory. That's a why I of a being seen merely appearing, gazing it alone. Indivisible. We all turning that black around will learn to cultivate feeling that as fielding that of you, of a view of a being still in the first place. Y'all alone, indivisible invisibility, is golden or why? Gold or why? Why the wise man? The why as man is mind or why grieves not. At best, celebrate elevation of that as a feeling of awareness of it. The golden indivisible or I egg of Jesus. Feel it as G's, us a gravity of being alone. Feel it, the psi whole as X, as expressed by now a YI on it, merely appearing and gazing it as X, as exiting toward twisting in formation out on a ball field of you of why your eye on you, the golden ore, why I merely appearing, gazing it, a unified field of you of a why I potential, appearing, gazing it out in the ore why, DNA of you a while. Now ask no knowing out of it any mirrored memory of a wild DNA. A denial, a positive negation of you now not as X. Why or you no mo? She paused. Moore could hear the words, but they began dissolving black into it. Heard him it as sound waves, silent, supersonic waves as zany thoughts of it. He found his attention drifting black around to the word-free, untouched visual world. From his perspective, the sound of her words blended with the salmon-colored silk of her blouse and light glinting off the curls of her hair. Starting with the contours of her body, he saw it shimmering play into the audience, like the waves of a mirage. Everything connected in one conscious, undifferentiated presence of a being still in the first place. Seeing the gloss of it a gain. He noticed other heads turning to see if neighbors experienced a similar black around revelation. A being seen in complete darkness now to be awareness. Where an essay. Now aware to be. From deep in his gut he felt something tear loose. An old egotistic phantom ripped from his belly with a raucous wave of laughter. Moore realized his outburst came at that pregnant pause that Margot Christina had been working throughout. Now more heads turned his way. He locked on her eyes. She now let go a peal of laughter that recaptured the hall's attention. What was it Shakespeare wrote about this earth horror movie? This good, bad-ass karmic dream? The wheel We all turning, churning, burning. A black around scene, a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. A signifying of the funny action function of it out in her eye of evil. A will we all turning into or out of a being seen out in word, information. A while now. Christina gazed his way. He jerked his thumb to outside. She nodded back. He hustled out of the auditorium to the parking lot for the box easel and drawing board in his truck. The lost magic had returned. He wanted to search for Christina with his crayons. He wanted to find her in the kinder garden of fielding a being of love, in love still in the first place alone. He made his way to her office after asking directions from 2 students and a custodian, a middle-aged Latino with thin mustache, pressed olive green dickies and red suspenders, the only one who seemed to speak his language. Still, he found it easier to go from the jungle to the city than the reverse. Where Ma's nature taught hard, eternal, cyclic truths, the city was always up for grabs. Indulgent in its wasteful, wasting power grid, he mused. Just as plugging in turns on the power tore from her guts, Ma's nature. Moore raised his hand to knock on her office door. Doubts crept into his head. Christina was a woman of significance who had answered her calling. The challenge of drawing her put a burn to his gut. He would hate to make a fool of himself if the sketch went poorly. The blood sank to his feet. As he turned to leave, she came gliding down the hall, her face flushed to vermilion around the cheeks and brow, eyes sparkling, her smile, lips parted to clean white teeth. "Hello there. I see you brought your equipment. Come on in," she said, pulling keys from her shoulder bag. Moore studied her hands. They were of good proportion to her arms and torso. He had learned caution around women with large hands, which he associated with some form of aggression. He figured a woman like Margot Christina to be aggressive to maintain her position in such a competitive world. Her expansive nature overcame his fears. She had none of the pretentiousness he had found so distracting in academics. The comfortable hodgepodge of books, sketch pads, and piles of loose-leaf papers stacked about her office further assured him. Not what you expected? More of an art studio than a prof's office. Pen and ink, charcoal sketches of ruins and figures in various classic poses were tacked on the walls. Are these yours? They are. Very good. You should be drawing my portrait. I have never been good at faces. Some of these are arc sites I have worked and visited. Study of philosophy for me requires a valid outward expression of this business of inner reflection, contemplating the navel. A person can become very clever with words without penetrating their inner revelation. I take no more account of the wind from their mouths, which caused their words, than of the wind which issued from their lower regions, to quote Leonardo. In Yiddish we say, Hakenschneinig, prattle like a teapot. She settled into a chair behind her desk. Set up your easel over there and we can talk while you work. As he sat up, Christina pointed to the light table. These are transparencies of Dead Sea Scroll fragments. It is easier on my eyes than the computer, she said, nodding to the laptop. My mother being Jewish, I carry an innate fascination with the Yids. That's why you mentioned Kabbalah? We are here in the heartland of academia, where y'all knowing is biased, towards objectivity, comprehending that subjective awareness of a being seen out of it fills up to the brim any objectivity in word as zany thoughts of it information. Comprehending that untouched, word-free, freed of a why merely a gazing, appearing it, merely becoming aware of a being still in the first place, indivisible invisibility of anybody, a why being seen, appearing, a gazing it of that awareness in toward twisting memory into a cunning validation of the mirage any situation, any appearing of it, appearing now, asking of it why, any knowing out of it in word, information a while. That knowing out of it seems to require a mystical experience beyond or outside accepted logical constraints. Well, it seems that as experience is any ordinary wave function of mirrored supersonic supernatural appearing of it, as any thoughts, a goddess of Ivre body, we all turning into or out of it, a black around it periodically as sleep into a black indivisible invisibility of a unconsciousness, directly experienced as bliss. A bliss now denied, sensed as sorrow. Somehow there seems to be that mystic veil between wisdom and isdom, between subjectivity and objectivity, she offered, raking back some errant strands of her auburn curls, between appearing, a gazing it invisibility, or appearing of it information. Most cultures of the Near East had books of wisdom. Some realized the foolishness of living a life merely as though born to a name alone. Wisdom books are to be found in the Bible, Job being one, and of course Proverbs as well as Ecclesiastes. There are 2 in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I worked on one called the Book of Secrets. Any philosopher worth his tenure knows the biggest secret is the truth of his or her own self. Yet, where and when is it ever talked or written? 99% is now asked knowing, ignoring of it. A positive negation in words seen as ABCs of a being seen not now anybody appearing of it in words. Ignorance of any knowing out of its still awareness, that subject of a being that I am is denied on and on ad infinitum ad nauseum, she added with a mischievous grin. Hey, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's on, of, to, for, from, or about that subject of a being that I am thirsting. You could pee it directly into my mouth. Not to be lewd and crude as whole artist. Seriously, your words give my brain and my heart a serious hand job. I hope you all don't take this the wrong way, but my brain, listening, hearing, ringing with the sound of your voice, has been in one long orgasm. The room settled with a layer of quiet as Moore prepared his drawing materials. He looked up. Her eyes probed his. He could feel her as a molten spring spilling, crashing over, flooding his sense of identity. All true revelations are self-revelations? Revelations of a being of that awareness that I am is of which you speak? He asked as he kneaded a wad of rubber eraser. Working the wad renewed his confidence. A man, picking up his tools, stretching out, sharpening, tuning, preparing for a task of pure love creativity, drawing on it, his inward being expressed now without word, drawing on the word freedom of right brain awareness. She now had her spoken word. He had his silence in sight. His of line, design, proportion, shading. All she now had poured into him, he would pour back into her eyes, into the drawing of it, drawing on it, into a merging of a being seen out in her eyes, Zion, horizon of a being, now him, her, him, it. Make a little love, get down tonight, played into his mind. Moore warmed up a square stick of hard pastel, sharpening it on a piece of sandpaper. He would begin in loose focus, pouncing some pastel powder on the fresh sheet before drawing with his left hand. In the crossover duplicity that seems to thread through life, favoring the literal right hand, he now sought balance on the left. He found that symmetry divide of L mode or R mode had been predominated for way too long by the subdominant inward spell. Now, a bursting out of it by a dialectic debate, raging inward to break that spell of a spelling of ABCs wide open. L or RI as function of it, or merely a being seen, appearing, and gazing it in the first place. He wondered a while, still awareness in a word freedom, of a being seen primarily in sight. Are we all turning into or out of a being seen still in the first place? Are we? Are we all turning, burning into or out of it, embracing or denying in word any information of it in memory? Moore wondered. His field of view focused on the paper on the drawing board with one eye, appearing it at her eyes with the other. Just let your head fall until your chin rests on your chest. Then slowly rotate it 360 degrees in a complete laid-over loop. Is this to get perspective? Ma'am, if you don't mind my saying, but that I am on fire from you. Yes, ma'am, in that I am trying for perspective, purpose, elevation, mind, and heart. Words kept getting out as he gave attention primarily to a visual, nonverbal, right mode of it, in artist mode. Art being seen out in that singular eye. A Y-eye of that I am seeing drawing, of a hand merely tracing eye, feeling that field of view, merely following eyes on you or out of me, we all turning into or out of it, our eye all of it, or are we? Or are we all still turning not, of a being seen still in the first place? A being of him, seen watching in her eyes, a head turning, rotating, muscles cording, the snake eye appearing it out in her eyes. She now, the temptress, he mused. Loosens you up. Now turn slowly to your left. Good. Throw your shoulders back. Page 76. Is that what you were looking for in the painting? A visual philosopher's stone to transmute base metal, he asked, watching the pastel crayon dancing over the tooth of rag paper. Christina responded with a Gioconda smile to break Leonardo's heart. Light faded into dusk as he sketched Christina. He leaned back in his chair and looked with first one eye closed, then the other. Interesting that we always say I of the artist, not eyes. Could it be that attention stays indivisible? Me or you indivisible, staring out of one eye or two? That paying attention affords me awareness of a being seen indivisible from you? That love shared as thoughts of it, indivisible awareness, means we all turn into or out of an invisibility of it? A being seen now dividing it merely as projecting, as knowing out of it in word? Any mere inward definition of it still indivisible awareness of ABCs? The darkness so quickly absorbs the light of a wide dialectic debate of it, she now replied with a straight poker face. Absorbed? It has burnt me up. At least any residual dross of me, he thought, or you, in one love. In any live portrait, Moore found intimacy with anyone that he drew. It seems that seeing in a word freedom favors picking up invisibility that's still indivisible. Words as swords divided as zany thoughts of it. He mused on the supernatural status of any appearing of it, of that awareness of any seer seeing of it remaining quite indivisible. Indivisible from any seer seeing out of it any point of you now appearing and gazing it out in any word, appearing in formation, supersonically appearing as any thoughts of it information. He now thought of it as zany thoughts of a God, as say to be literally ABCs, appearing of it out in words. Now out of any eyes and knowing it as otherwise, mere idea. Idea of a being seen appearing and gazing out in any mirror, now finding that indivisible divided, as knowing of it, appearing me, he mused, with amusement. Me finding now that I am mere knowing out of it as any memory, as thoughts of a being otherwise by the power. A psi whole power? Christina interjected with that ironic smile. Pasciencing whole power in her eyes, appearing, gazing it out in words, spelling of it as any thoughts, appearing of it information. Moore found himself at attention of a black eye of a goddess, say to be literally, y'all, a creator creation of ABCs, of a being seen, a gain of it out in word, as any appearing of it in any name alone. It still in a word freedom, indivisible invisibility. Now at attention it seemed our eye all of supernatural supersonic sword by a definition, cleaving any artist seer off in a cunning uncanny duplicity that as thoughts literally divides us as sword, as word, as sword sound wave function of a left brain hemisphere. A sphere eyeball race of man as zany memory enclosed by a surface, every point of which is equidistant from the center point of a white eyeball seeing appearing it, now as zany appearing, gazing it out in words, appearing of it, information now a while. Yet, debatably, in fact, we all turn around, continuing still in the first place as awareness of a being seen in a word freedom indivisible invisibility. ABCs of a being seen still any existing motion of it. He thought he'd choke on the inward information pouring into his mind. or a Y horizon at horizon it. She now had loosed some inward store of wise domus, a being seen home for this Homer boy. Why did you give up painting? She asked. A long story, I won't bore you with the details. Somehow I doubt it's boring. That painting at Corner's home shows there are some interesting images stirring in your head. Why not let some more out? I was responsible for a death. Echoing in his head, the words sounded hollow and disembodied. Outside the window, a flag snapped in the wind, and eucalyptus trees shone black against the purpling sky. Moore smelled a sour odor coming off his body as a silence rang the room. He tried to read her, but the shadows had deepened. Her thoughts seemed suspended beyond the room's boundaries. Perhaps you better explain. Guilt. Guilt by association is still guilt, Moore offered with a heavy sigh. Are you talking about your marriage? She asked, still maintaining her pose while picking up a transparency from her desk. My marriage, love, hate, and destiny. The killing of my wife was the result of the influence of James Corner. He brought you and I together, and if he repeats his past, he'll tear us apart. Rather ominous warnings about a friend. Corner is the worst of friends. I get involved with him to satisfy a longing for adventure, even knowing the adventure can turn fatal, or maybe because it can. Sounds like a reasonable motive. Innocent people like my wife get hurt. Gina was the price I paid for following Corner. Now I'm stuck with him again to resolve the devastation. I know Corner, and he ain't after ageless wisdom. He hired me to translate the Copper Scroll. He wants the gold of Herod the Great, the one who restored Solomon's temple, she said. Herod had his wife, her brother, grandfather, and mother, and his own sons put to death. His passions were fierce and ungovernable. A perfect match for Corner. Where is this treasure? He asked, resurfacing the wedge point pastel crayon on a square of sandpaper. The Romans looted the treasure in 70 CE, including an immense 7-branch candelabra and possibly the Ark of the Covenant. 3.5 centuries later, Visigoths sacked Rome and pillaged the entire wealth of the Eternal City. Much of Herod's treasure is believed to have ended up in France, where the Visigoths established mountain sanctuaries. Treasure hunters, from Knights Templar to Nazis, have searched in vain ever since. Forget the scholarship. You're helping Corner find buried treasure. Quite a come down from the altruistic seeker of truth you present to your students. Where are your ethics, lady? He asked, half in jest, tossing the crayon in a box and shoving the easel drawer shut. Page 78. Your friend Corner brought me high-def reproductions of the complete Copper Scroll, digitally restored by Electricity de France to its original sheen, no less. I saw it as bait. Now, in that, I am curious about you. When the lines are drawn, whose side will you be standing on? It seems there is no love lost between you and Corner. He told me you were still angry about something he did. What is in it for you? See, the thing is, I've known James since we were teenagers, running wild around the Windy City. I know of his roots. I've known his people who adopted him to work on their failing farm. Well-intentioned losers, but still solid farm stock. A country cultural pool that would pretty much dry up and disappear from following generations. His folks went belly up, lost the farm, moved to a hard-scrabble edge of the city. Then his ma dies and Pop gets all drank up in the bottle. James drifts to the criminal side of town. See, James is completely different stock. I've done some research. Basically, I learned that James has some good old Jew boy in him, but on the criminal Meyer Lansky side of town. Ours was a marriage made in weed. But what happened, less than a week after we met, I run into him in a South Side blues club. We were underage, but always managed to get fake IDs. Anyway, James is all worked over like a bad stepchild. Black eye, broken nose, head wrapped in a bandage. I says, "Geez, did you get the license number of the truck?" sort of thing. Turns out he was shagging the wife of some local wise guy. Got caught with his pants down. Told me the dude fired a round between his legs. That was the real beginning of our relationship. Maybe it was the blows to his head brought out the psycho in him. That was the summer before he went to Nam. August 1st, he shot me. We'd been out poaching deer. James still had some country boy in him. Naturally, he acted all upset, like it was some terrible mishap. Took me a year to recover. Missed my heart by an inch. I realized then that he could be, or could have been, my executioner. Except for your ma, you'll never have a closer relationship than with your executioner. See, men have this unspoken bond, the brotherhood of the warrior, and all men were warriors at one time or another. Some of the most nondescript meek Marvins out there were real killers in a past loop. Still, y'all warriors fall in time, the best with their moccasins on. Most times this bond is invisible, struck in some mystic battle from another lifetime where friends now may have been enemies then. All men potential executioners, executing each other. If there is other incarnations of our situation, like me appearing here with you, somehow I'm feeling like I've known you a really long time. Moore felt his heart race with his words. I felt that the moment I laid eyes on the painting, your painting of Adam and Eve at James Corner's house. Tell me more about this Jew boy Corner, she replied with a curious expression. So James went off to the war. Actually, in the beginning, he was doing okay. Flying solo a single-engine prop Cessna, dropping smoke bomb markers to signal jets where to drop their napalm bomb loads of greased fire. He was in and out while everything on the ground was still there. Just before a shitstorm of burning jellied gas, enhanced with phosphorus to make it burn hot enough to melt flesh into bones, got launched on basically unsuspecting civilians. Then James, flying above it all in his little two-seater bird, got knocked down by a farmer with a homemade shotgun. Now he's on the ground, seeing up close and personal what exploding jellied gas does to human beings. Some mamasans out cutting sugarcane got caught in this hellfire. A local surgeon in a field tent recruited James to help hold the poor women, what was left of them, as legs and arms were amputated. He told me one had her breasts melted into her ribs. The worst part, he said, was the dignity of these people. These people showed this dignity despite the pain. We spent many hours talking of this. He made me do drawings from his memories and my imagination till their anguish became seared on the paper and in my mind. Eventually, James made it back in a prisoner exchange, but instead of coming home, he gets reassigned for combat just in time to find himself in a little mud and stick village called My Lay. He would never talk to me about it, but I read the report from the investigation that came out a year or so later. It made me appreciate his state of mind. I already had some inkling on that psycho state of mind from my mother, who was a certified bipolar schizophrenic. Sometimes she'd look at me hard with those deadpan eyes and say the darndest things like, "You ain't shit, boy," or "You ain't never gonna get away with it." I knew from growing up around her that Corner was then and is now psychotic. But I'm just an idiot on a fool's errand. I guess in my heart what I really hoped to find was a muse to fire up my passion to paint. Funny that word is so close to pain. I can't guarantee the story won't end with Corner taking the cash and leaving a trail of bodies behind. He saw her now studying him. A silent pause echoed his breathing. Then she spoke. "On that I am without any guarantee that will not happen, but can raise the stakes with some ancient intact papyri. A virtual and ivre existing treasure trove of our ancestry. And when I say our, I mean Indo-Euro-Semitic Egyptian, with the essence, the quintessence of y'all in it. A time machine of ABCs, masking a being seen as king of it. Why now a knowing out of it as cosmic being. Trust me, Dark. That I am about to tell you will show why getting involved with Corner one more time is worth the risk. Go ahead. I still think you're being reckless or downright stupid." He pulled the drawer open and retrieved the stick he just tossed in. He moved the pastel quickly over the surface of the drawing, dancing over highlights, getting down in the shadowy recesses. "Earlier you mentioned the burning bush in reference to your vision of the Illuminatus. I call it that because of the flames. I saw fire. Tongues of flame appeared before my eyes in the middle of Geary Boulevard in the concrete heart of San Francisco. That's why I call it the burning bush, even though there was no bush. Instead, I saw a pyramid. The flame moved from the foreground until it capped the pyramid, surging with a roiling helix sea of eyeballs. Later, I tried to describe it to a friend, and burning bush just got tagged on it." Words can only betray, only belittle the astonishment I felt at the time. You don't have a vision like that so much as the vision has you. As king of it, why a knowing of ants. He finished with several slaps of a chamois and a few swipes of a sponge blender over the pastel. Then he brought up the highlights, stabbing with a rubber eraser. Ants. We all seem to turn into living out ant lives, yet as king of it. Why? Revealed in a vision, having you then, having you now every day for the rest of your life. Perhaps there was a bush in your vision, the burning bush as the Great Pyramid in the Moses story. Certain papyri, stolen from the pharaoh's tomb less than 100 years ago, reveal the potential identity of everyone from Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Aaron, even Adam and Eve. It seems the Bible is Egyptology, revised to disguise as mere shepherds certain pharaonic Egypto-Indo-European Semitic ancestors. A shepherd as king of it, with monotheistic warrior priests in an exodus from Egypt. The way out now as existing as thoughts of a singular great, gotta say to be letterly, all ABCs, of a being seen now as king of it, why a knowing denial of it. Now a knowing out of it, a chintzy, chiseling, thin king of anybody. As Exodus, attention now captivated in toward a twisting into a knowing denial of it. At attention, merely appearing, a gazing it now, as king of it why, now out inward captivity, appearing of it a slave. Their disguise came 8 centuries later in Babylonian captivity, as the Babylonians hated all things Egyptian. Biblical scribes revised their ancestry as Mesopotamian. As king of it, why? This would be Pharaoh what's his name? Moore continued to work the highlights with the eraser, cleaning it with a pull like gray taffy, kneading out the pastel residue. No, but maybe his son or half-brother Tutankhamun. I am talking about the real treasure of King Tut. Papyrus scrolls of sacred revelations handed down to me from my maternal grandmother. Grandmama's father, 5th Earl of Carnarvon, financed the excavation of Tutankhamun's tomb in the early 1920s. She got to tag along to the Valley of the Kings with her father and the American Howard Carter. They made a premature and illicit foray into the tomb 2 months before the official opening. They chiseled a mouse hole just big enough for them to slide in. Later, they replaced the mortar and stones, even using a duplicate wooden stamp to impress the unsuspecting. It was a put-up job, but I think enough money changed hands and people were willing to look the other way. Of course, 2-month-old mortar would not look the same as 3,200-year-old mortar, but they pulled off one of the biggest frauds in history by covering their handiwork with artifacts from the antechamber. You can see the pile in old black and white photos. It worked because they were able to keep the experts out until the entire passageway was cleared and every trace of their activity was obliterated. Christina leaned back, lacing her fingers behind her head. Moore felt the hairs on his arms stand up. The papyri they found might well have changed the course of nations, but they were never produced and probably would have been denounced at that time. A young girl's innocence, and later the bond of mother to daughter, protected them. Worth more than the gold and precious stones, the papyri remain hidden. You have them? His throat clotted as he attempted speech. Written in hieratic, a cursive form of hieroglyphs. No one could read the script back in the day. I had kept them in a safe in the city until someone broke in and stole them a week ago. So you're saying you have proof? Archaeological proof. With this Hebraic hieroglyphic reconciliation and names of certain pharaohs carved in stone stelae and cartouches, we can recognize the patriarchs, Abraham, Moses, and Aaron. They weren't shepherds? Shepherd kings, pharaohs. Now you see why I want Corner to hunt down the missing papyri. This talk of pharaohs is intriguing. I want to know more. I'm feeling like my life has been meaningless until now. I mean, screw Corner. Use him and abuse him. I've seriously thought about killing that bastard myself. He's consumed by greed and power over people's lives. Part of that cancer that eats away at so much of this country, but don't get me started. Hell yes, I'm your man. Whatever I can do. He returned to the image coming up on his drawing board. They sat in the muted light of the room, letting the quiet take the place of conversation. Christina's breathing became his breathing, Moore's heart beating in rhythm with hers. He retraced the contour of her eyes, the bones of her cheeks down to the tip of her nose, then along the moist flesh of her lips. He stroked Christina's chin down to the unlined flesh of her elongated neck. Have you ever known somebody for a brief time only to lose them, she asked, and not regret what little time you had together? He heard her voice but could not see where it came from. The words repeated till he realized she spoke to him from inches away. When she touched his shoulder, he felt current passing from her fingertips to the back of his hand, squeezing the hunk of eraser. He reached up and cupped the back of her head, drawing her lips to his. Christina stiffened. She jerked free, balled her fist, and punched him. The blow left him stunned with blurred vision. By the time his head cleared, she had gone. Wind knifed into corner when he stepped from the Lincoln at the firing range. He pulled at his heavy wool overcoat, smiling at how only a few miles could separate hot and cold in Northern California. The rawness was a welcome distraction from his troubled thoughts. Dragging his fingers over the stubble on his jaw, he felt fleshiness puffing on bone. The years had piled on. Time for one last job. Page 82. A man had to do certain things in life despite any misgivings, like letting Warren play him for a chump. John Stone Warren, his employer and founder of Messing Technologies, dangled the copper scroll to him as a diversion. When he dug for Warren's real intentions, placing cold cash in the right hands for information, the shock at what he found left him reeling like a drunk. Warren had designed a personal final solution in a word. Something about a word beginning the world and a word ending the world. He didn't know how such a thing was possible, but now he had to figure which side to choose, and was there a side to choose? Corner rummaged through the trunk for a worn canvas satchel with stuffed side pockets and frayed shoulder strap. For those non-lethal engagements, he had the taser. The pistol held a compressed air cartridge and could fire 50,000 volts into the victim, causing involuntary muscular convulsions. Not a lot of convincing was required with the taser. He thought of using the weapon on Christina in a little low-voltage foreplay. He hoped an hour blowing holes in paper targets at the range would settle his mind. From the satchel, he pulled a nickel-plated Colt Python 357 that fit his hand like a glove. It had the report he needed to clear his head and the cordite stench to settle his nerves. Thinking about the end of days made him wonder what he really gave a flying fart about. He was a family of one, and friends were negotiable. Money was always funny, and he needed plenty drugs to keep going strong. The checkered grip of a pistol held a high position on his list. A good whore, maybe most of all the fan of a card hand on the tips of his fingers. Why the cards, he wondered, beyond passing time. Thoughts of Colleen, the new girl at Zena's brothel. Baby cakes. Her tight, small body with a trace of baby fat heaving with pleasure against the handcuffs and ropes Corner enjoyed using. Colleen was a perfect whore who enjoyed matching him kink for kink. He held his stance and fired the heavy weapon. Young Asian toughs on either side emptied numerous clips from their Glocks. You gotta love automatics, he thought, especially when you be making the bullets. Salutations, Warren, you old devil. Pow, pow, pow. These damn paintings. Pow, pow. The paintings were the umbilicus joining him and Moore. Warren buying one of Moore's vision paintings. So now it's got to be him and the slice of professor to do the dirty painting. Pow, 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 pow. Should he have to choose between saving himself or Moore, well, he'd made that decision the night Gina died. For now, he needed the darkness to get next to the professor and the key she held to the scrolls. Corner knew he was not one of her biggest fans. She was also an unknown piece to the expanding Warren puzzle. He may have come on too strong with his questions about the Sagari. Christina seemed to get suspicious at his intelligence, as if metaphysics were beyond his comprehension. Money was money, gold was gold. There are higher meanings for those not relentless enough to make the score. He squeezed off another round, felt a python recoil with a blast of gunpowder, and watched another slug rip through the paper target. Burnt powder, sweat, and gun oil made him smile. He slouched out of his firing stance, letting the weight of the weapon drag his arms down. If a man stood before him instead of paper, the lead would rip his flesh, the hydrostatic charge letting loose a tidal wave in his bloodstream. All the voodoo around Warren and his last word meant nothing if he could be killed like any other man. A crescent moon glowed above the tree line as Moore headed for his truck. Despite the shock of her blow, he still tasted her lips. He knew she'd get inside him long before he could get inside her. He wondered if she was attached or interested in his guilt-stained offerings. Would he regret it if she was? He knew he wanted her too much to pursue her. He stowed the box easel and drawing board with a sketch of Christina in the pickup. He should have given it to her, but then things got a bit awkward at the end. She'd started a hunger in him that could only be satiated one way, if not with an exchange of bodily fluids, with pain and paint. This picture book might have some ideas, but he'd rather paint her than fools and priestesses. Moore drove from the Stanford campus to a gas station. He found a payphone, slipped a couple coins, and dialed. "Corner, what is?" "Is what is." Cryptic fucker. "How about we meet for dinner? Toroya Sushi on Fillmore off Pine. I'll be there in 45 minutes. The receiver went dead. Moore looked at the telephone with a frown. Same old Corner, talking like every conversation was monitored. He finessed through San Francisco traffic till finding the restaurant. The sushi bar ran the length of a narrow room with a few tables at the back. Only a handful of people occupied the bar as he pulled up a stool. "A couple of Sapporas, Ikey," Corner called from the entrance. One hand hit the bar with a slap, the other curling around Moore's shoulders, fingers digging into his flesh. Corner wore a red Gore-Tex windbreaker over a black and white print shirt unbuttoned to his sternum. A St. Christopher's medal on a gold chain glimmered as it bounced off his broad chest. He dropped his overcoat on a hook. Tan canvas drawstring pants and leather topsiders gave the impression that he had just stepped off a schooner. "Make mine ice water," Moore said when the 2 bottles of Japanese beer appeared. "No way, old friend. Tonight we drink for old times and new." Corner was feeling the juice, letting his body dip and flow like the old days in Chicago. Moore dipped to catch his uppercut, bellies bumped, and with hugs his cheeks got slapped. Moore blew off his sobriety with a shrug. Page 84. The decision had a higher purpose, relating to art and breaking through the inertia of hiding for too many years. Bullshit. He needed a drink. Their voices gained volume as they drank. He and Corner moved from beer to hot sake. "How was the gig with Christina?" Corner asked, with his worst wise guy smile. He stretched with his back to the bar, arms spread, fingers tapping the polished edge. Light popped and sparked off Ruby's serpent's eyes, setting a gold ring circling one finger. "A moment happened and I kissed her." He pointed to his cheek. "She gave me this bruise." "Smooth, man." "She's not the kind of chick to jump." Corner pushed off the bar and pivoted on a stool while gunning his sake. "Christina isn't any kind of chick. There's real soul there, man. Here we go with the Madonna shit. Smarts or not, the bitch pisses and farts like us other mortals," he retorted, tossing some bills on the bar. "Fuck off, Corner. Is there any woman you can fake respect for?" "Not one. Near as I can figure, women have the world by the short and curlies, especially when they are a fine piece of ass. Christina has permanent residence in Cloud Cuckoo Land. She wants to be a goddess." Moore headed out the front door. Outside, chill fog wrapped its shroud around him. Foghorns moaned as he jammed his hands into his coat pockets, stomping his feet on the hard pavement. Maybe he had idealized Gina. When she died, he never finished mourning her. Was he now mixing those feelings with those for Christina? Only one afternoon with her. Was she that one woman as all women? Madonna and goddess and savior, yet still so human? He watched Corner through the steamy window as he settled the bill and slipped on his coat. He paused to talk with a red-haired man sitting at the bar near the door, huddled over a drink. They exchanged words as Corner started for the street. He turned, grabbed the man by the back of his jacket, and jerked him to the floor. He gave him a couple shots with his feet. The man stayed down. Outside, Corner stood on the curb and pulled on a pair of leather gloves. Son of a bitch has been tailing me for 2 days. He a cop? No, private stooge. He must be on you for good reason. Who knows, Corner replied. Come on, get over your hissy fit and I'll show you my new pad.